Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of SPOILERCAST, a Hungry Gamers offshoot that aims to inform, entertain, and educate you all on one particular release from within the geek culture universe. And on this episode, we're tackling none other than a game that was released recently on the 7th of October of 2021, scoring 74 for PlayStation 5, 76 on PC, and 79 for Xbox Series X on Metacritic. Developed by several teams at Ubisoft and published by Ubisoft. Today we're talking about first-person, most of the time, action-adventure shooter known as Far Cry 6. And what is Far Cry 6, I hear you ask? Well, it's set in the present day, set in a fictional Caribbean island known as Yara, which is loosely based on a modern-day Cuba, ruled as a dictatorship by El Presidente Anton Castillo, who is portrayed by Giancarlo Esposito, who is raising his son Diego, played by Anthony Gonzalez, to follow in his rule. The player takes the role of guerrilla fighter Danny Rojas, voiced by either Nisa Gunduz or Sean Ray, attempting to topple Castillo and his regime. And joining me on this version of Guerrilla Radio, my amiibo, or my amigo, depending on if you want to go the video game route or Far Cry 6. You can find him on them socials at Jono himself, Australia's Jono himself. Welcome to the Liberation Army. How you doing?
Lights out. Guerrilla Radio.
Turn this podcast up. Welcome back. We have both recently completed Far Cry 6, a game that has been out now for 8 days at time of recording. We just wanted to quickly shout out those legends over at Ubisoft, providing myself with a key for Xbox Series X, as well as Jono with a key for his PlayStation 5. So you're going to get some similar impressions, I'd say, with how this baby ran on our respective platforms. But JP, shall we jump into it and maybe talk about our overall general thoughts? What was our experience with Far Cry 6? Thumbs ups, thumbs downs, all that kind of stuff. Lead us off, good sir.
Yeah, so we'll keep it spoiler free to start off with, but this is a Far Cry game. It's very Far Cry. That's probably the most, basic thing you can say about it, but it's also just so true. Like, as you pick this game up, if you've played the others, if you played Far Cry 5 a couple of years ago, it just feels like you're right back there again. It's a new coat of paint, it runs a bit smoother, it looks a bit nicer, and there are some subtle changes to the environments in gameplay. Obviously, like, the literal environment of the Cuban setting is very different to Montana or wherever it is in America, but when I say environments, I'm talking about the way that you interact with the wildlife or the enemies or in the hub areas. So it is it is, there are some small differences, but for from the most basic sense of it, it is another Far Cry. Is that a feeling that you had as you were playing through?
Yeah, 100%. Like, anyone that's played 20 minutes of Far Cry 1 through to 6 and all the DLC and offshoots, you're going to feel right at home picking this up on console or PC and gunning down countless of evil individuals. It's just familiar. It's that nice, chaotic, open world comfort food that I think we all love. And yeah, like, it has a fresh coat of paint and does some changes from the traditional formula that happens with every subsequent Far Cry release. But it's certainly feels like home, you could say. Like, if you've engaged in a Far Cry over the last decade or so, you'll not feel out of your element in Far Cry 6, running around Yara and living your best guerrilla life, as they like to say. I gotta say, like, my ignorance is probably the biggest thing with that. Like, I always thought, and maybe Zach De La Rocca and the guys at Rage Against the Machine confused me as well with Guerrilla Radio as the song name. But obviously you hear that sort of Latin tongue roll that they do in Far Cry 6, where it's, it's a guerrilla instead of a gorilla, as us ignorant whiteys say.
Yeah.
Which way are you going to lean into the full sort of Yara pronunciation, or are you just going to keep it rage and gorilla, mate? Gorillas,
yeah. I can't roll my R's and stuff like that very well, so I'm just going to go with the Aussie-fied everything on this. So apologies to any Latin listeners or Spanish speakers, because we'll definitely be butchering some of the terms and some of the names. And man, there's a lot of Spanish in this game.
A lot of Spanish, and it's awesome to see. And I turned the subtitles off in the game just to get a bit more of a cinematic experience, as I like to do with these big narrative-based beasts. So there was a couple of Spanish words that did get thrown around on the screen where without the subs I didn't completely understand at first. So I had to pay more attention and understand. Like I didn't lose any of the main story going on here, but it felt great. It's just a big, interactive, explosive melodrama, this game, and I love it.
Yeah, I have seen some critique of the way that, and it's not just this game, but I noticed it in Cyberpunk and pretty much any representation of these cultures, how they just like pepper their English sentences with Spanish words, which people, at least the Latin Americans that I've seen talk about it are like, that's not how people talk. So I guess my point is that we're coming at this from the perspective of two white guys in Australia. Yep. And our understanding of this, apart from maybe some interactions with people online or in our travels across the world, we're looking at it through probably mostly through what we've experienced in games and movies and TV, as far as like, is this true to life? Like, we don't really know. I can say, like, I didn't find playing the game like problematic. Like, a lot of some of the discourse out there is about the way that the subject matter is handled, the I guess the nuances of the politics in Cuba and that kind of thing. This isn't the podcast probably to listen to for a deep dive into that and to understand whether they've portrayed the culture in an accurate or fair way. I wish I knew more about that, but I simply don't, by matter of being on the other side of the world. So we probably won't be diving into that side of it.
Yeah, no, I think you put a nice bow on that whole statement you just said there. Yeah, we're not going to be getting into the nitty gritty and the semantics and the temperature check as far as how things are going in Cuba and the comparisons and nods that Yara may or may not showcase in this game. But yeah, we're just two white dudes, and I'm a white country bumpkin from a tiny little pinhole of a town. So my opinions aren't always accurate, and my knowledge on global politics is even less so than that. So yeah, we're just going to look at it from a gamer's perspective. We can dive into some of the themes and tones and messaging that does get bandied around in this game, because it is a big game and you do engage with a lot of diverse personalities and get thrown into all types of emotional or sensitive situation scenarios. Some just overly over the top, ridiculous, insane, humorous, side-splitting type of laughter that comes of it. So it's kind of interesting that it does jump from really big emotional payoffs and jaw drops where a pivotal character you thought was going to be with you to the end suddenly gets gunned down, and then 5 minutes later in a cockfight doing, Street Fighter parodies with angry roosters. So it's
it's a tough line to walk for Ubisoft with this, because like you're talking about slavery and you're talking about like all the like dictators and the nuances of the politics of getting involved with these kinds of leaders, and the way that they hold their medications ransom against their own people, and the true Yara and the fake Yara, and this kind of almost like a civil war that they're fostering as a leadership. So yeah, there is this kind of heavy content, but instead of like something like The Last of Us where it's on tone the whole time, this is kind of like, and now we're going to have a rooster that, kills 30 dogs.
Yeah. Cue the Benny Hill music. And but it works for some reason.
It does, for me at least, yeah.
Like my entire playthrough where, you do have these heavy, heavy scenes, and then it jumps to you're flying through the air in a wingsuit and you land and you shoot this guy with a gun that fires, very aggressive discs of the Macarena, and then your angry crocodile, your angry rooster comes in over the top and attacks someone else. Like it somehow just works. It's just this.
Or a crocodile in a t-shirt.
Yeah, and a gold tooth. Like, it's the best. I love you, Guapo. You are my favorite amigo in this game. But like just the writing and how it's delivered, the team at Ubisoft there, or the multiple teams that were involved in putting this game together across the globe at Ubisoft, have done really, really well. Like you said, sort of, they were sort of dancing this line. Like it felt like they managed to walk this tightrope the entirety of this narrative, and you get a complete story with a payoff at the end and some interesting other things we'll talk about later. But like you get good character development, you've got good protagonists, you've got a really, really, really good antagonist, which I just adored the entire time he was on screen. Like he just sucked up all my attention anytime he was on screen with El Presidente, Anton Castillo, and it was just fun. Like I really, really enjoyed this game. It's not a perfect game by any means, but it was so fun and so enjoyable. And just Ubisoft does big open world games better than most, it feels like, and they've really nailed the secret sauce that is Far Cry, and it feels like they've just combined all their powers over the previous iterations to make 6 and make it really freaking enjoyable.
Yeah, very well said. I think, if we're talking like spoiler free about the story of this game, the fact that they added a protagonist with a name and a personality for the first time, I think since Far Cry 3 probably, with old Jason Brody, that was such a big improvement for me compared to the faceless, silent protagonists of Far Cry 5 especially, and being able to see that person in cutscenes, in third person, and you walk into a camp and you're walking around in third person. I thought it was a glitch the first time it happened to me.
So did I. Like so listeners, full disclosure on that part there. Like it's a gameplay spoiler, but not a narrative spoiler. But when you walk into sort of neutral controlled camps, you go from first person looking through male or female Danny's eyes to third person over the shoulder style. And I thought the game broke. I had to stop for a second. I'm like, hang on. And I moved around. It was all fine. And I could still interact with people. I'm like, oh, this is just a gameplay choice. This is a mechanic they've implemented into this. I'm like, okay, that's cool. It works.
Yeah, and it's good because these games, like I'm going to talk about Far Cry 5 because it's the most recent one before this, but you design your character, you create a character, you pick their outfit, pick their hunting hat or whatever, their boots, and then you just never see them in the rest of the game unless you die and the camera pans out and there's your character bleeding on the ground. So to actually see Danny in this game and to see Danny interact with the other characters and have a voice and have a sense of humor, or to actually push back at certain people, or to have to be at odds with some people's goals and have your own kind of motivations, I found really interesting. Instead of just, oh, you're the new guy in town, we need your help.
I loved her. Like, I played female Danny. Did you play female or male Danny?
I went male, yeah.
Yeah, so I loved her. Like, the voice acting was phenomenal, and the character models were really emotive. Like, you could see when Danny's angry and sad and upset and frustrated and laughing and, having good times and bad times. So, Nisa Gunduz, who lent her voice stylings, and her voice work in this was phenomenal. I've watched a few little trailers with Sean Ray's voice work as male Danny, and he seems to really nail the delivery and the tone as well. Yeah,
I thought, for the most part, all the voice acting was fairly good, especially from the leads, in Giancarlo and his son, what was his name? Anthony Gonzalez, you shouted out before.
Yeah, is Diego. Yeah, that was so good, man.
We'll get into that in the spoiler section, but, Far Cry is always, as good as its villain. And the games that you remember the fondest are the ones that have the villains that stand out the most. So I think Anton Castillo is right up there with Vaas as far as Far Cry villains go. And he's in the game probably a lot more than Vaas was too. In between the big sections that you complete a region, or you complete a key part of the game, you're basically trying to get the 3 different groups of guerrillas on your side for this effort. So as you complete each of those, there's these cutscenes where it cuts to the villain and you actually see them. So you're not just constantly hearing them over a PA system or on the radio or that kind of thing that they rely on in some of these other games, or the few interactions where your character crosses paths with them, you're actually seeing them away from what your character is seeing. And those cutscenes were all brilliant. Like, it was almost like, you know, sit down, turn the TV up, lean forward, put your controller down, and just like you're watching TV, like an episode of Breaking Bad or something.
110%. And like, we sort of avoid some of the narrative spoilers here, but there's some really, really similar beats that are playing from Breaking Bad to Far Cry 6 as far as Giancarlo as a bit of a role reversal. At least that's how I took it away from it after sort of reflecting on the game when credits rolled. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed this game. The experience was fun, and the gameplay, I liked how they've expanded and simplified some of the mainstays that you're getting used to in these, like as far as resource and crafting. They've sort of simplified how you do a lot of that, so it cuts down a lot of the headaches and a lot of just the menial crap with crafting and upgrading weaponry and items, which I found a pretty smooth experience, just getting to a workbench with the resources you just natively collect as you go from point to point in a mission, to get those weapons and those gadgets or your Supremo tweaked out the way you like. So I think you had that list in there too, as far as that smooth, simple crafting.
Yeah, just the fact that you don't have to be like, okay, I have to go kill 3 ostriches, or to bulk out my wallet so I can carry more money. Like, I don't know if that is in every Far Cry game, but it's certainly been
it's in a lot of them, yeah,
that they've used before. So to simplify that and make hunting and resource gathering more of a extra activity, even like the way that you heal in this game, like you don't have to gather herbs and turn them into potions. Like, it's just, everything's kind of streamlined to make the game easier to navigate and just a bit more fun to play. And as far as like the gameplay itself and getting around, like, I did feel like there was less focus on like the wildlife. You don't have to be constantly worrying, like, is there a cougar around the corner, or is there an alligator going to jump out and attack me and ruin my mission?
I did get attacked by a fair few rampant mongooses. Mongeese?
Oh, yeah.
How would you pluralize mongoose? Mongeese?
I would say mongeese, but I don't know if
it's
accurate.
Yeah, a couple of mongoose attacks, a couple of bloody rabid rooster attacks. Like, there was moments in this game where there was just gangs of roosters walking the streets just looking for blood, and they'd always get me mid-mission. But yeah, it didn't really distract or take away too much from what you were doing. Like, there was a few crazy zany moments where an animal would start attacking an enemy NPC I was about to engage with, and you sort of just, you know, I'm just going to sit back and watch all this play out, you know? So you just watch the insanity just build and build and build, and then one of your guerrilla friends come in and start shooting as well. You're like, well, it's made easy for me now. I'll just go in and do what I gotta. So, yeah, there's less derailing of the wildlife across Yara, that's for sure.
Yeah, which is good and bad. Like, in all the stuff we're saying about how this is another Far Cry game, it kind of comes down to how much do you like Far Cry? Because some of those things, you're like, sweet, more senseless action, like, that's awesome. But maybe you liked that chaos that comes with all those animals and unleashing a lion in the middle of a camp or whatever it is, which there's some of that, but much less of that. Like, I found that not every camp had like wild animals just caged up.
Yeah. And I found, like,
sparingly,
that they sort of gave them adequate amounts of HP that would actually be the equivalent of an animal in real life. Like, it's not just it's God tier and it's King Kong out there killing everybody. Like, it might get 1 or 2 people, but they usually get gunned down pretty quick, as you'd expect.
Yeah, unlike the Amigos, which are just basically invincible.
Some of them were a little bit squishier than others. Obviously, they've got their own utility and strengths that they lean towards. But yeah, a couple of sort of the attack-based Amigos, yeah, they were just savages. They would be running in or crawling in or flying in or you know, whatever means of transport they utilize, and just wreaking havoc, especially when you're like, all right, Guapo, you get that guy, I got this guy, and you watch him waddle off really quickly in his jacket and start attacking. Oh, it's the best.
So Guapo was your Amigo of choice. Should we talk about those guys?
Yeah. So the game, right off the jump, you pretty much befriend this guy who's got a pet crocodile named Guapo, and you sort of on this mission as you're escaping and killing a couple of infidel, you become friends with Guapo, and he becomes your amigo. And in the game, I think including the DLC from the 2 expansion, from the collector's editions that we got gifted from Ubisoft, I think there's 7 or 8 amigos you can have, including the 2 from the DLC. I think it's somewhere around there.
I think that's right. Yeah, I think it's 7.
Yeah, so you've got Guapo, the very angry reptile straight away with you, but then anyone that's been on the internet would have seen all the social media blasting with Chorizo, the little dachshund in the wheelchair. He becomes one of your little amigo confidants and runs around with you and runs roughshod and distracts people with his cuteness, so you can get in and stealth kill. And then there's a whole heap of other creatures, like you've got a cyborg or a robot dog, really, from the Far Cry 6 Blood Dragon outfit set you get. And then you've also got is it like a white jaguar, I think? Or a white leopard?
There's 2 cat type ones. One is unlocked through
the game.
Doing some treasure hunts. And the other one was, one of those DLCs.
Yeah.
Like a Black Panther.
Yeah, and then you've got Boom Boom, the dog. And then you've got Chicaron, the angry rooster, who is just the story arc with getting him on side is just ridiculous, but I loved it.
Yeah, I ran with Boom Boom or Boom Boom for a lot of the game, being that I tried to approach most scenarios with a stealth way, and he was good with that kind of thing. It was a bit frustrating that the perks of these characters, of these side characters helping you, they're meant Boom Boom's meant to tag people for you and this kind of thing, but it didn't always seem to work, or it was kind of random when it would work. So I wasn't exactly sure if I was meant to be telling him to do it. They don't really explain that stuff to you. But I did enjoy him, and so cute, and patting that dog and having him jump up in the car next to you was definitely one for the dog lovers. Chorizo was fine, but I didn't find him as useful as Boom Boom. And then so that was probably the one that I rolled with the most. But when it did come down to attack mode and just wanting to wreak havoc, I did find that Guapo was probably the most useful.
He was just a tank, and he had a self sort of heal / res ability in there too, so he could just get up and keep doing damage. And it just added a nice little wrinkle to combat, just amidst the insanity of you blowing up and sending people flying every which way, just seeing your animal friend rolling in there, wreaking havoc as well. It's sort of like you virtually want to high five him when you see him running around the battlefield with you. It's so good.
Yeah. It's a nice touch too, the way that the NPCs react to your amigos. They'll comment about, oh, you got a crocodile with you, oh, your dog's so cute, and this kind of stuff. So yeah, I did like that touch.
Most definitely, yeah, because a lot of games like that, you'll have a sidekick with you and they're just non-existent to anyone but yourself. So it was nice that they were living and existing in this very, very vibrant and very lived-in Yara. So the gameplay, I think we've sort of touched on that. The other part, I guess, in the gameplay is that nice mix of stealth versus action. Do you want to go in all guns blazing? Do you want to maybe wingsuit your way in off a cliffside and then slowly parachute in and try and stealth kill your way to the target, or what? What did you lean into more so, did you find, JP?
Typically stealth, as I mentioned with Boom Boom. It was, we'll get into our weapons and combat style. I guess this is a nice segue into that, but I did prefer to have a few silent options, and then when things go awry or a body gets discovered and an alarm gets set off, then it's good to have that powerful kind of assault rifle to just clean up, as I would put it, and also then the RPG to take care of any unwanted traffic, such as
which
helicopters.
There is plenty, because there's always some sneaky bugger I found that either get to the alarm or shoot the flare into the sky, and then you've got 2 choppers and a tank on your ass as well, and you're like, well, Yep, stealth is over. Bring out the heavy guns.
Yeah, it is fun, like going to a base and trying. Like I've got the trophy for like taking out the whole camp without getting spotted. There's if you can find a good place from a bit of a distance with the sniper and pick them all off, take out the alarms, take out the captain or whatever they're called before they can shoot off the flare. But yeah, I it's that thing that it's pretty much the way that I like to play most games, like Metal Gear Solid 5's a good example, where you go in there with your dart gun or your rubber bullets, and then when things inevitably go chaotic, you just quickly pivot to chaos mode and try to get out without dying. And
because you are pretty squishy, like you've got like a healing option on cooldown, and then you can also equip some healing syringes via Supremo when you upgrade that later, but it doesn't take much to knock you down, and if you don't have any guerrillas in area to pick you back up, you'd be dying a bit in this game, or at least I was at times.
Yeah, and that's why I ran with the backpack kit that revives me.
Oh, good call.
Because I would constantly I'm a sucker for games like this, and like especially like the Division 2 was another one with the same ability where I just try to push my luck when it comes to combat. And so it means I die a lot. So I like to be able to revive myself and get that extra chance at going at it. So yeah, that addition of, I guess, a way to customize your character is a great one. Having I guess they're called Supremo kits, or what are those backpacks?
Yeah, you just like an ordnance kit or something like that, and like
special abilities basically.
Yeah, and I know you've been able to play some of the multiplayer, which some of those kits certainly lean more towards, where you do have health buffs and the ability to not only self-res, but also res your teammates. But because I was playing this solo, I didn't get to experience that. And I literally didn't change from the first Supremo the whole game, just because the one you get given from one right off the bat shoots a salvo of rockets that lock onto enemies and just seek them out, and it saved my bacon far too often. Some of the other ones, like, oh yeah, you can drop poison onto the map and it might make the enemies attack each other, or you can drop a ring of fire down and stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. Give me the big explodies.
Yeah. Nice. What about yourself? Was it action or stealth or both?
Similar beat to you. Like, I'd pull up at a checkpoint or a base or whatever you've got to try and sort of liberate, and I'd whip out the sniper, I'd whip out the smartphone, because obviously you got the best zoom on that and it's going to tag your enemies really quick. So I'd scan across with my Huawei or whatever it was, and then I'd always run. I had the Blood Dragon pistol you get from the DLC because it was silenced and it could shoot burst or full auto. It's a beast of a pistol. But then I'd have a silenced assault rifle that would act as my sniper. So I'd have a 4 times on that with a suppressor and the armor-piercing bullets, because most of the enemies seem to have damn helmets. So one shot from that and gone. And then I'd have a non-silenced assault rifle or SMG for, like as you alluded to, when things get spicy and you just need to be dropping rounds, something like that. And then I was rocking in my my third primary weapon slot, the Resolver weapon, and I settled mostly on there's a single-shot sniper rifle that shoots explosive rounds. That thing, especially against helicopters, was a godsend. Or if I just wanted to get crazy, I used like the Macarena gun. I used the party gun that shot like the time delay explosives with the fireworks. I'd always just bring something along just to create havoc and just have a laugh. So I just that'd be like my my parody gun that I just get out when needs be and just have a little bit of a chuckle to myself.
Are we hearing snoring dog in the background?
Yeah, Bentley, he's had a big day. He's had a big day, haven't you, buddy?
I was like, is that my ears or am I imagining it? Yeah, I was the similar where I tried out most of those guns, like the CD shooting one and the harpoon crossbow.
Yeah, the harpoon was cool. And the lightning gun sucked. I didn't like the lightning gun. Did you use that one?
The EMP one?
The one it like shot like chain lightning, and it knocked enemies to the ground and
I think I used that. Yeah, I used that as like an EMP to like take out a tank, but only for a trophy. So yeah, a lot of the Resolver ones, I pretty much just tried them, and then they all kind of were designed to have a bit of a drawback. So for the harpoon one, you can only carry like 5 or 6 ammo. Other ones had their own issues. So I typically tried them for fun and then switched back to something a bit more practical. The one ping assault rifle that you get for one of the missions towards the end was the one that I ended up in the end game sticking with. Oh, there he goes. That one just like tore up enemies. It's silenced, and it's like it only holds 20 bullets to a clip, but you only need like 5 bullets to take out a dude.
Yeah. And the good thing with the game is the more notoriety you achieve and infamy or fame, depending, I guess, on what side of the fence you're sitting on here as Danny Rojas, is the enemies around Yara upgrade as you upgrade. So the more famous and infamous you become and the more things you do, the more El Presidente goes, you know what, we need harder men and women out on the streets trying to keep Yara safe. So you go from just squishy military men and women in just, t-shirts and pants almost, to people that are armored from head to toe and with rocket launchers and heavy machine guns and whatever. So you do have to adapt and adjust your playstyle as you go, which I liked. And so you had to sort of have a bit of an assortment on what weapons and what bullets those weapons had to make sure you were going to succeed.
Yeah, I think they really did a good job of allowing players to customize basically every gun in different ways to your play style.
It's so deep. Yeah. It's so deep. Like the weapons, they're on a 4-star rating system. So 1 is your baseline stuff you're getting early on. And then when you start finding 4-star weapons or obtaining them in quests and things, they're going to give you more upgrade and mod slots. So you can really start pimping these things out to be just death machines.
And it was never like overwhelming or frustrating as far as like having the crafting materials for them as well. Like it's quite simple. Like, I don't have enough gunpowder. I'm sure I'll find some in the next mission and I'll come back and get that upgrade that I want. So I feel like as far as that balance, it's a pretty hard thing to do really to make make the player feel powerful but not too overpowered. And I think they really just kept that loop going really well and balanced that to a really good degree.
Most definitely. Like the fact that the whole world leveled as you did, it kept you on your toes. You couldn't just become this commando Dutch from Predator killing machine where you just forward all the time. You did have to have a bit of tact and adjust to certain scenarios. And then going into certain areas after dark, where there was curfews on, so there was more enemies patrolling and you had to sort of rethink how you were going to get from point A to point B. It was so good. And then all the vehicles at your disposal to do things too really helped. And then having your own vehicle you can summon where you could just, replenish your ammo and your gadget numbers on the fly was great as well.
Yeah, the balance is really on point, except for if you play online with a friend who's like in a previous or like at a different point in the game. So I was playing with Jared when he was in that first starting area and I was like level 10. So I just went back there and just destroyed all these like level 3 enemies. And in the same way, like he coming into my game couldn't really do any damage to the enemies. So it doesn't seem to find like a middle ground between your player levels, which could be frustrating for some people. But
I didn't have any friends to play with, so I didn't get to test it.
So if we're talking about like the controls, one of the things that I found in the game was the climbing. Like it wasn't good. Especially
it sucked, man. It sucked.
Like when you're meant to climb, it's fine. But there's often times where you just want to climb on something and it has to be like a specific area for climbing or it won't recognize and it won't honor your attempt to climb. So even just something as simple as like, I want to climb up on top of this roof. It's like, no, you want to climb on top of this fence. No, you can't do it. Which is, you kind of expect that in like I guess like an Uncharted or like some kind of third person game. But for Far Cry, maybe I'm just remembering it differently, but it just seemed like there was things I wanted to do that the game wouldn't let me. And then especially when it kicks you into that third person view that I love in the camps, you just lose all ability to jump completely. Which
your feet are glued to the ground.
Which is really annoying when there are tiny fences that are blocking you from going where you want to go. And I just want to like fly through the air and get down the level to avoid the stairs and going around. And just a minor gripe. And there's there's quite a number of small minor gripes that popped up throughout the game that we'll cover off by the end of this, but that was one of them that probably bothered me the most. As far as like this type of game, you want to feel like you can do anything, and you can wingsuit and you can parachute, but you can't climb on top of something. It kind of ruins that freedom.
Super frustrating for me. Like that was one of my bigger gripes during my 30-ish hours or whatever it was I pumped into this game over the past couple of weeks. But yeah, like, and like, especially where you get to the areas where it is designed as a climbing area, where you see the fluoro orange paint on the edging of the cliff face or the building, so it implies that yep, you can jump and climb there. But there'd be times where, unless you're looking at it from a certain way, it doesn't give you the climb prompt. So you're standing there just jumping up in the air, going nowhere from you. Like, come on, man, I'm getting shot at from behind here. I got to move. And then you sort of move the camera over, and then there's the prompt. I'm like, oh, thank God. And you climb up there, and it's just when obviously they've got access to, say, studio heads that have handled Assassin's Creed. Why couldn't they take some nods from games within this company and go, you know what? Let's implement some of that. Let's hold in, if we've got the option to hold in A, or hold in, like when you're strafing, you're just automatically going to mount and climb things, because it'll be such a more smoother, enjoyable experience, because it's so annoying and so janky, and climbing sucks.
I guess it's possible that climbing that way would break the game to some degree with certain areas, but I don't know. Figure it out. That's not our problem to worry about as the player. We just know that if we want to do something and we can't do it, and it seems like you should be able to, it's just
like you can vault things without having to look for a prompt, but certain climbing parts you need that climbing prompt to get up. So yeah, have some similar ruling in the back end for your code. But like, I say that like I'm an experienced coder, and I know it's just flick that switch and you'll be fine.
Just go to Assassin's Creed and hit copy and then paste it into the code for Far Cry.
Exactly. But yeah, outside of that, the controls do feel pretty nice. Like the combat is tight, whether it be melee killing via stealth, which is just a visceral, confronting experience. When you are slicing and impaling these people with your big machete through under the chin, through the skull, into the side of the neck, into the chest, and then ripping up, like,
it was a bit
you
much.
are a killing machine. And you see the genuine fear and shock on these troopers when you're doing these kill shots, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry. And you pull the machete out and stuff. Like, it's intense, but whether you're meleeing, whether you're shooting, the fishing controls, the vehicles, everything's felt pretty smooth in this game as far as whatever context you're trying to use the joysticks and the face buttons for, and the triggers. Like, it all felt pretty good to me.
Yeah, this is basically how I want a first-person shooter to feel. I'm not a Call of Duty guy, so I can't really compare it to that. I think COD is considered like the gold standard for how a shooter should feel and play. But if you compare this to, say, Deathloop, which we reviewed recently, this feels so much smoother and easier to like line up your shot with a enemy and that kind of thing. I did turn on the like aim assist, but it's not like... It's not completely automatic. You still have to try. It just kind of tracks them a bit better once you have locked on to them. Even still, it's not foolproof. Like, it does take it. You still have to try quite a bit. So even though you have to try, it's pretty easy and it just feels right. So I think that it's been over the course of 6 games now that they've been at this kind of style. So it makes sense that they've more or less perfected, I think, the first-person action, because it's not just, I guess in a Call of Duty, it's more running around, crouching, but this game's like sliding down cliffs, jumping, parachute, like wingsuit, and then you're flying through the air. You're falling to the ground with the parachute, and you can start shooting people before you even hit the ground.
Yeah, it's super smooth, and having so many buttons and requests and requirements just mapped to your LB or your L1, where you're holding that in to weapon wheel to other guns, or maybe change your gadget you've got, whether it be from a grenade to a Molotov or to a turret or whatever it is. It's really smooth, and you can just whip that on the fly. When you're aiming down the sights, it's just, press up on the D-pad to get your amigo to start attacking, or press the other button to summon them back. Like, it's super smooth, and it feels like you're sort of just directing little mini skirmishes and mini armies on the fly. You're like, all right, go there, swip to this, throw that, drop this turret, switch to this gun, and it just becomes really, really easy in the muscle memory for me. Like I've played a lot of these games, so it didn't feel alien, but knowing there's those slight changes from version to version, I felt like I mastered the combat within maybe half an hour to an hour. I felt like I was like a gorilla, as they say. I was, I felt legitimately like a gorilla.
Yeah, and once you get the wingsuit too, like I don't really like driving in these games. I try to skip it as much as possible, so I'm constantly fast traveling, and being able to just like airdrop into an area and just wingsuit to the closest objective or to the anti-aircraft, weapon that you want to take out or whatever it is. That controlling your character flying through the air feels like you've got so much control, and you can get so much distance as you hook around the mountains and into the deeper valleys and that kind of thing. So that
just remember to pull your chute, because the first few times I didn't, I'm like, I can just sort of go in at a smooth angle and my feet will like run as I hit the ground. No, it's not the case. You die. You die straight away.
Yeah. Or if you happen to hit like a tree branch or something, you die. Yeah. I learned that pretty quick. So yeah, I mean, the game just feels great to play. Like it's such a fun open world, and to be able to just have that level of control over your character feels pretty good. Like it's not like Spider-Man where you can like zip around. Or even like Just Cause where you can, grappling hook up to any surface or anything. Yeah. But as far as for being a Far Cry game, they've certainly figured out the right feel for it, and that's something 100%. That they shouldn't change.
Yeah, there's so many fast travel points for rewarding you for your exploration. So by the time you get a good chunk through this game, if you don't want to run or find a vehicle or a horse or whatever it might be, you can just go to the nearest fast travel point and then, jump and wingsuit down to there, or summon your car on demand via that L1 or LB and
which I almost
down
never
on
did.
the stick. I summoned it a fair bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it just was nice to have that at your disposal where you can get around this map super quick because it is huge.
Oh, man.
The map is huge.
I was going to say, like, by the end of the game, I still have huge areas that I haven't uncovered or even, like, gone near because I guess if the game hasn't forced you to go there and you haven't gone exploring or hunting for, like, what are they called? Like a exotic beast or, like, the
or the treasure hunts and things like that.
Yeah, if you haven't gone down all those nooks and crannies and done all the side content, there's probably areas that remain unexplored. So even though I've done like, most of what the game has to offer, I feel like if I went exploring, I'd probably uncover a whole lot more. So there's plenty there. It's certainly not a game that's left wanting for things to do.
Exactly. There's so much to do, and when you're doing all these things, one thing I couldn't help but just be in awe of was just the overall gorgeousness of this game, of this world, the character models, the vistas, the sunrises, the sunsets, the weather effects, the vehicles, just the general landscapes, the guns, how they sounded, how they looked. This game has so much polish to it. Like, it is stunning. It ran like a dream on my Xbox Series X. Like, I didn't have any hard crashes or any freezes. I did notice, because I was playing this before the release when we did get that day one patch, I did notice a couple of times during that sort of week or so leading up to the release, there was a couple of drop frames a few times in cutscenes or in sort of high activity based combat. But outside of that, this thing was just... And I just wanted to shout out my note here where I said that day one patch had it looking prettier than Ana de Armas in the summertime.
Very nice, very nice. I was similar in being impressed with the game. I think it's important to note that this is an open world game, and it's a lot harder to make an open world game have that level of detail that you've come to expect from, a Naughty Dog game or a God of War or something like that, where they're able to just, take these fewer density, like lower density environments and just pack them with detail. Everything in this game looks really lived in and pretty detailed. You can there's a million people that worked on this thing, and you can tell. And the character models look really good for an open world game. The environments don't repeat themselves. Like things just there's unique things all over the place. And I guess some of the bases that you travel to have some similarities, but aside from that, I was very impressed with how good this game looks. And it does have a bit of a stylized Far Cry thing to it, where it's maybe a little bit oversaturated and brighter and more vibrant, but that adds to the Far Cry feeling of being this, exotic area for you to explore.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly paints Yara as a gorgeous island paradise, and then obviously you look underneath the bed and see all the atrocities and the war crimes and everything else that's happening around the place. But the world that exists, this Yara, this island, is just a sight to behold. And there was moments where I'd be in the middle of combat or going from mission to mission. I'd be driving or running through the wilderness. And yeah, just some of the way the light rays would break through some of the, the tree line, or if you're on the top of a mountain and you're looking down and you can sort of see all the way out to the ocean, you're watching cars driving around, people living, doing their thing, people on horses. Everything seemed to exist in this world, and everything in that world seemed to serve a purpose, which is testament to the people at Ubisoft to put this together.
Yeah, I should have messed around with photo mode, but I didn't.
Neither did I, because the game's so big.
Yeah, I just forgot about it, to be honest. It does look beautiful. If we're talking about performance, I was impressed with the loading times. It wasn't as quick as other games, but for an open world game to load that quick was pretty good. It's not Ghost of Tsushima level quick, but it is still pretty quick. I had a few graphical glitches. There was one where the texture of a dude's pants would flicker in and out, and it looked like they were disappearing completely. That happened a couple times to different guerrillas. Or actually, no, they were the enemies. What are they called? Just the soldiers. And then there was a soldier that got stuck inside of this big rock, and it was an area where I had to kill everyone to progress. So I had to figure out how to get to him. I think it was flamethrower or something that did the trick in the end. And I had one actual freeze where in the menu, similar to what happened with Deathloop, I was just in the menu and the game just decided to freeze on me. But that's pretty good for a game like this. You kind of expect the big open world games to be chock full of glitches and that that kind of Bethesda level jank that you just occasionally get. And I guess there were a couple times where Guepo would be running up a wall or something.
Yeah, Spider Pig, he was.
Yeah. But apart from that, yeah.
It was super smooth, very impressive, and I was also just as impressed with the music and the soundtrack to this game. I loved that it mixed classic and modern tunes that were mainstream that maybe might have just been more local classics. It had a really diverse soundtrack that highlighted a ton of different Latin genres and also just genres in general. We got, mainstream radio rock and pop to there was some hardcore and heavier stuff. There was some salsa beats in there. And, as we've been spoiled with over the years with the GTA franchises, jumping from radio station to radio station in certain vehicles and just having a toe tap and tune playing as you're driving around, or maybe you're just walking through a town or a homestead or something. It's so good hearing these little ditties popping along. I'm yes, this is so great. It feels so authentic.
Yeah, I definitely dug the instrumental stuff with, all those Latin vibes. It just really nails the tone and makes you feel like you're there in such a way that only music can. Hearing Ricky Martin pop on with "Livin' La Vida Loca" was a nice little moment.
So
I was
good.
they got this song in here. And there's so much Spanish in this game, and the music's so accurate that I just, whether it's hearing words from the characters occasionally or hearing certain songs, but I had Despacito running through my head a lot of the time I was playing this game, even though the song isn't featured on the soundtrack. But Macarena, You just love to hear it. It's a little bit memey to hear some of that stuff in there, but it works for the setting.
It really does, and like having some classics like Ricky Martin, and then that Havana song by that Camila Cabello. I heard that pop on a few times. Like, damn, that's like a current radio hit right now, and it's in this game. I'm like, this is cool. Like, well done. No doubt those licenses and those approvals would have cost them a hefty fee to get them into this game, but well worth it. And it just adds more authenticity to Yara and to this experience. So I loved it. I guess maybe we could jump into some other things that we didn't love so much, spoiler-free, before we maybe dive deep into spoilers and, get that spoiler-laden discussion up and rolling. But, other sort of nitpicks, gripes, or bugs, if you want to sort of throw them in as well. JP, I thought the game was too long. I thought you could easily cut a couple of hours out of the main story and still have a fantastic narrative, a fantastic experience, but it'd just be tighter, more focused, and less dense, because some of these quests or missions do just blend into each other and you sort of forget or lose, like, well, not lose, but you don't care as much for some of the characters, some of the stakes. You're like, fuck, again with this guy, again, man, like, save yourself this time, bro. Like, I'm sick of it, but it just happens.
Yeah, I definitely. It's hard to know, really, because we're playing it with the intent to finish it, so we can do this review right now. So it's a bit different to the average player, but it's certainly, you're right. They certainly could have trimmed, maybe not 3 or 4 hours, but at least 3 or 4 missions, depending on how long they take you. The first section. So this isn't spoilers, but there's 3 regions that you have to liberate, I guess, before you can do the final assault. And they kind of indicate an order that you should do them, and I did the opposite order. So the first area that I tackled, I felt like that one dragged on the longest, which was the last one for you. Because there's 3 people that you're helping, one of them disappears, and then there's the natural climax, I'll call it the performance, to keep it spoiler free, and that feels like it should be the last mission in that section, and then it kind of just keeps going. And I didn't realize that I hadn't completed it. I was ready to move on to the next section, and then realized in my menu that I still had some missions to do. So it really did feel like they could have trimmed that one in particular, and then the others, I think that all those areas could have probably ditched 2 or 3 missions, to be honest. You certainly get your money's worth with one of these big open world Ubisoft experiences, so you can't shame the developer or the publisher in that regard. But as you said, we were sort of playing this with the mindset to finish it as quick as possible so we could get a nice, succinct, thorough podcast out about our experiences. But if I could play this sparingly or when I wanted to over the space of 3 or 4 weeks, I'd probably be singing a little bit of a different tune. But because I'm like, fuck, I just want this done. Just join the revolution, brother. I've done enough already. Oh no, now go run those meds there, or no, go thwart those drugs, or break down that rum business over there. It's like, come on, man, let's go kill this dude. But you're getting a lot for your dollars. That's the thing, is you actually can. I don't know. Is this a spoiler? They give you the final mission early in the game. So if you want to, you can just go and do it. I guess it's similar to the Breath of the Wild, where it's where the boss is, but you got to build yourself up to get there. So I don't know if
that's a Far Cry thing. Yeah, you're able to do that in some of the other ones where you can just climb that mountaintop and find the big bad and chop them down then and there. Obviously it comes with its own struggles, and you're not going to get the full narrative experience, but it's there, and I like that with these games. It
would change some of the cutscenes. I think in that last mission, maybe they're not in the cutscenes, but they're running alongside next to you, so maybe you've got less support or whatever. So I would be curious to maybe, if I ever play this again, to see if I can just go for the throat straight from the beginning. But I do like that they give you that chance, even though I guess it means that if people only want to play the game for 10 hours, they probably could.
Yeah, they could. It'd be a tougher go about to try and get to El Presidente, obviously, without your loyal guerrilla fighters that you are bringing to the scene to Libertad to get to join your guerrilla outfit, and also you wouldn't have the same level of gear. But maybe at the same time, maybe the enemies wouldn't be as high level too, because obviously your renown isn't as high, so your level's not as high, and the enemies would not. So maybe it would be easy.
I think that that final mission, when you first get it given to you, they're like level 9, and you're probably like level 4 or 5. So it would still be hard, but I'm sure it's possible. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we're talking about it.
It'd be tough, because that we'll talk more in spoilers. But yeah, that final mission was pretty tough. There's enemies coming at you from every which way. But
I got a few more nitpicks that I can mention. Throw
them on the fire.
I'm just going to go rapid fire. These are small things that just bothered me. You can't talk to people when you're standing behind them. The talk prompt comes up, but you press it and nothing happens. You have to like walk around and talk to them from the front. Small thing, but kind of annoying. Headshots that don't kill people for some reason. That really annoys me, especially if you're trying to like clean out an area and you've got the armor piercing thing. You hit them in the head and they go, oh, there's someone there. So you have to take another shot at them before they kind of sound the alarm. That frustrated me.
I've got to say, I never experienced that. Like if I got them true in the head with the armor piercing rounds on my guns, every time.
Wow. Maybe I was like hitting them across the neck, or I hadn't upgraded something on my gun or something. I don't know. But I did find that a few times as I was trying to stealth my way around. I had a glitch where it was the first camp for you. It was the last one for me, where you get there and you have this phone conversation with Carla, the leader of the Libertad resistance, and you say something like, "Oh, I met the leader, Carlos, and he's not a fan of me, but I can get in with his daughter." And then she's like, "Great, you have to get on their side. They have to trust you." Every time I went into that camp, that phone call played out. As if I hadn't heard it. Yeah, so I probably heard that interaction like 8 times throughout the game. And it's like, hey, I was like, we're well past this conversation.
That's a weird little glitch there.
Yeah, so that was funny. It was one of those funny glitches that you just got to laugh at. But that's it. That's a pretty short list of nitpicks and gripes as far as the spoiler-free stuff goes. So let's get on into it.
Yeah, all right, listeners. So anyone that hasn't played Far Cry 6, I think we can probably both unanimously say, please do so, because it is a good game. But we are going to be diving into spoilers and talking big plot lines and big sort of narrative outcomes here. So if you haven't played it and you don't want your experience spoiled, pause the podcast now. Go invest 30-odd hours in Far Cry 6. Come back and listen to the podcast. But if you want to keep on this journey, be warned, because spoilers are coming thick and fast like guerrilla bullets from the jungle. So, JP, let's maybe jump into our favorite moments that we experienced in Far Cry 6 as a nice sort of taster for spoilers.
Your mother is dead.
There was so deadpan Giancarlo.
So many, like I said before, all those moments in between the big story beats of the game where it just cuts to him and his son, and that kind of storyline that runs throughout the whole game, they were the things that I'll remember about this story. And pretty much everyone was, if not a gut punch, it was like the plot thickens, or this is interesting, or some kind of like depth about either the son or his father, Mr. El Presidente. So that they were my favorite moments as you kind of revealed. Like you've got that one where you realized that the mother, it was his mother that had been killed. There's the one where he kind of smacks the prisoner across the face, and you start to wonder if the kid's gonna follow in his father's footsteps, or you're learning that Castillo had cancer and was quite sick, and like each of these little nods, each of these little moments I found very kind of un-Far Cry, because often it's the story is kind of secondary to the action, and this time I was much more engrossed in wanting to take this guy out and wanting to free this land and getting into that story and wanting to save this kid from his own father, which is it's a rare thing for a Far Cry game to make you think that way and feel that way, and that was probably what stands out the most to me about this compared to previous iterations of this franchise.
Yeah, I was so drawn into the story and these characters right from the opening, where you're talking about escaping Yara and going to live in Miami and life is going to be great. And then you find out that El Presidente's son is on this boat with you too. And you've got this immediate connection to Diego and you want to save him and get him away from the evil that is his dad. But then I found too, as time went on with El Presidente, obviously, yeah, don't get me wrong, he's an evil man and he's doing horrible things. But like what I mentioned earlier in the non-spoilery stuff was it feels like Giancarlo Esposito has gone from playing Gus Fring to almost parodying Walter White to a degree, where he's a man doing right by his family, which in his eyes is obviously Yara, it's his country. He's working on this cancer treatment based like pseudo making drugs as Walter White does to try and better his life situation and his family situation for when he dies. And he's terminally ill like Walter White. I'm like, there is so many little nods here. Like, was Vince Gilligan involved in the writing here? Was he doing some ghostwriting for Ubisoft? I don't know, but I just couldn't help but sort of laugh and nod and appreciate the sort of indirect connections to Breaking Bad in that way. But yeah, he's a hell of a bad guy, but he's a good bad guy because you when you can put yourself in their shoes and go, you know what? I kind of understand where you're coming from with some of these decisions and why you're the way you are. You go, I get it, man. Like, I can empathize a little bit to a degree with what's happening here. And it's just really, really good storytelling. And even this random caricaturish assortment of freedom fighters that you meet and befriend along the way, they're all fleshed out enough and developed enough for you to respect and appreciate and understand and appreciate why they're fighting. You know, they've all got unique causes and reasonings as to why they're up in arms against El Presidente.
True.
And I was on board with all of them. I'm like, yeah, I'm with you guys. I'm with you now. I'm with El Tigre and the old guard. I'm with the young tech heads over here. Like, let's go. Let's take this guy down and have fun together. And I loved it. I loved those big giant set pieces when it is obviously mission, go kill this sub boss, you know, storm this base or storm this airfield or whatever. It's always storm something with some friends. And the boss is always holed up in the office at the back end of this thing. So it's the same formula, but every single time I'm like, let's go, let's do it. And, you know, you're having phone calls with people and interacting with people along the way. And it just felt awesome. It felt like I was playing out a nice, well, not nice. I was playing out one of these types of dramas on television in my hands, and it was amazing, JP.
Yeah, that's some good enthusiasm from you there, Brendan. I'm on the same page. I hadn't thought of this until you were talking about it, and unlike, you know, a previous spoiler cast we did on Ubisoft's release, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, I actually remember all the different characters in this game because they're so different from each other. And it's a similar thing where, you know, Valhalla, it's, get these people on board, do some jobs for them till they're on your side, and then we'll take down the fortress. Same thing in this game, a lot less, you do it a lot less loops around in Far Cry compared to Valhalla. But the way that all these NPCs and side characters are fleshed out, they're all very different from each other, so they all stand out in their own way. You've got the family of fighters that have their own community. You've got the old guerrillas up in the hills. You got the young tech heads that you mentioned, and then you got these musicians that are doing their own like pirate radio thing. And they're all very different from each other, but they all have the same, I guess, motive towards the end, which is to change the environment that they live in. And like you said, they're all, I think, written fairly well. Like, maybe there was some caricatures happening or stereotypes happening that I'm not aware of, but they all felt real and authentic to me. There was a lot of, like, representation. You had, like, a trans character in there. You had I loved Paz, the the kind of the fat dude who got drunk and was convincing you to go drinking with him. That was almost like a Lenny kind of moment.
So good. Lenny! Some of my favorite video game moments ever.
And I really did enjoy getting to know those characters and not feeling like overwhelmed by like who was this guy again, and like you just spent time with each group and you just focus on them until you move on to the next group, and it just worked in that sense, and they didn't overwhelm you with too many characters, and there was never really a time where you're like, who was that guy again? Am I meant to care about him who just died or whatever?
Yeah, and when some of these characters die, like, because some of these main protagonists that you're running around with, you do lose a few of them suddenly and unexpectedly, and I was like, what?
Like,
what?
How about that?
No!
How about the mission where you stealth into the private island, and you've got Guan, who I never really trusted Guan, but you've got Guan with the sniper, and he's trying to take out Diego, and you kind of throw yourself in there, and then old mate Clara gets taken out.
Yeah, she gets shot. Like, the face of the revolution, the one that's going to become, I guess, female Presidente for all intents and purposes, she gets killed. And you're like, what? What's going on? But even like the one of the young rebels that's sort of from the young group, you know, sort of like the redheaded baseball fan, how she gets gunned down in like the poisonous gas that kills her, and like there's some moments.
And
like,
Carlos got taken out.
So many moments like that. And I'm like, okay, no one is safe in this game. And I love that because it kept me on my toes. It kept me caring about these characters. And they did the same with the host of sub-bosses you have. Like, they introduce them all. They give you a bit of backstory, show you who they are and a bit of personality and how they slot in. So you really start to not appreciate, well, you appreciate the writing and the depth that Ubisoft have gone to make you care or hate these people. But the fact that they didn't go kill baddie XYZ, they're like, you know, this is who this person is. This is why they're doing it. You get some good cutscenes. You get some good phone interactions. And it's so great. I've got to quickly ask on this front because there's one of these sub-bosses, which is the Canadian businessman. And you end up capturing this guy on this big sea barge after many chasings around the island of this fella. And you get to him, and then Juan calls you and goes, don't kill this guy. We've just made a deal. He's going to bankroll our Libertad. We're going to, get what we need. Don't kill him. The second I hung that phone up, shot him in the head straight away and killed the dude.
Me too.
But like,
yeah, I did too.
Juan never said anything.
I know, they never acknowledged it. I thought it was going to be like, Danny, what did you do that for? Like, or there would have some consequence in the game, but it really didn't. So I loved that you could kill him, but I didn't like the lack of consequence. And I was hoping that you didn't shoot him so I could find out if it...
I thought you wouldn't have, because I know you're a bit more pure of heart than me, so I'm like...
see, when they tell me not to do something in a game, I always like to see if I can do it. So I'm a sucker for trying to like shoot my NPC side characters and friends and that kind of thing, trying to see how much... like trying to break the game, see if they'll stop you from doing something. But they let me shoot him, and I did shoot him because I didn't like him.
It's funny too, because I shot him and he didn't die straight away. He just fell to the ground. He was like face down, but he was still like moving and talking a little bit. And I'm like, oh, do I just walk away now? And he's like, you've ruined the deal. The deal's off. And I'm like, well, I got to finish off now then, brother. And another one, I killed him and then left. But yeah, Juan never reprimanded me or anything.
Yeah, what did you think of Juan? Because I feel like he was sketchy from the get-go.
I didn't trust him.
Yeah.
Didn't trust him because he's like telling you to do deals and don't tell Clara and doing this and that. And he's got deals with other people, we'll talk about later when we jump into the ending stuff soon. But, he's an old gorilla and he's an old wild, dodgy dealer and he's made it this way in life and he's a bit of a legend. So I respect that. But yeah, I don't trust the dude, man. Yeah. Don't trust him at all. I was waiting for him to shoot me or like turncoat me all the way through the game.
In that mission where you go around and do the dead drops and get captured, I thought that he was going to be the one that kind of handed you over.
Out,
but they didn't go that way. I'm glad they didn't because it was good to have that I guess that the loss of Clara as he kind of caused that. I was a bit disappointed that Danny didn't kind of push back against him more. I kept waiting for that to happen, where he said, "Hey, we're not going after the kid. I'm doing this my way, and get behind me." Like, you didn't really have that moment where Danny stood up to him, but yeah,
she was very she or he, like whichever Danny you were playing, they're very reluctant for the spotlight and for any type of power and control. They're like, no, I'm just good with guns. I'm a gorilla. Just let me do my thing. I don't want any power. I don't want any responsibility. And at the end, you ultimately sort of have it thrust upon you. And
that speech,
the in air quotes, the motivational speech that you say to your group of misfits in Libertad is fantastic. And I think it really embodied Danny really well in that moment. They didn't suddenly become this larger-than-life superhuman. They're like, yeah, let's go get this guy. You know, they were a bumbling mess and the words were terrible and everyone's like, yeah, cool, man, or cool, lady, let's go. Like, woohoo. Like, it was so good. Yeah. I loved that part.
That was good. Good times. Any other standout missions or side quests for you?
The other one, there was a side quest I got because there is cockfighting in this game, and that is a little bit controversial in this game. And there is many an animal that gets mowed down in this game. So if you are sensitive to you shoot a lot of dogs.
So many.
So if you are sensitive,
Ali wouldn't get 10 minutes into this game.
No. You kill many evil dogs, which are embodied by the Doberman or the Rottweiler breeds in this game. They're typecast as the villain dog as per usual. So jumping back, there is cockfighting in this where you can have side scroll fighter elements where you select your rooster and you fight another rooster, and you can bet on this, and you actually, you can do certain attacks and kicks and moves, and it's a whole thing, and it's hilarious, and it's the best.
I'm surprised they got that into the game, to be honest.
Me too, actually. I thought that would have got snipped for sure, it's in there.
It was in Sleeping Dogs as well, but that was more like you bet on the cocks instead of
you weren't controlling them.
Yeah, but I guess they got away with it somehow.
Yeah,
Peter
in
wouldn't
there,
be happy.
And
but...
you find random sort of little crates around the island with other roosters in there that fight better than the one you might have at the time. But there's a side quest I went on where I guess you could say the ring leader of this cockfighting league at the guerrilla encampment sends you off because he hears that a disgruntled cockfighter contestant has been experimenting on roosters.
Stole his spurs too.
Yeah, first one, stole the spurs. You go get the spurs back, which obviously for a lot of cockfight purists out there, they actually do put weaponry on the talons of roosters to make it more bloody and more hectic, so they can slice up their prey a little, or their competitor more. So you do that part. Then the next one is, he's been scientifically engineering and enhancing these roosters with steroids and experimentation. And so you go to this old abandoned bunker and you go down into this labyrinth, and it becomes really dark and decrepit and dank, and there's stuff on the walls a la like LV-426, the ship from Aliens. And then there's a couple of lines in there about, they're coming out of the walls and game over, man. Like, there's so many nods to the movie Aliens in there. And you've got these twisted, scientifically enhanced roosters that are hellspawn coming at you from everywhere and jumping at you and clawing at you and clawing at you and pecking, and you're killing them, and then you're getting chased by them as you're running out, and it's a whole thing. And I was just equal parts terrified, in stitches, and just in love, because it was just so many nods to James Cameron's Aliens, one of my favorite movies of all time, and just crazy insanity with just twisted, enhanced roosters coming at you. And then for a few missions after that, there was just groups of roosters roaming the streets, like as I mentioned in the non-spoiler, where I'd be trying to take down a bloody a checkpoint or something, and a gang of roosters start coming in and messing me up and these enemies, and it was just a thing, and I loved it. And the Chicharon story arc where you get him to become your amigo and you're running around killing dogs, and then you've got to climb to these high points and like you graffiti Chicharon on the highest point of the building, and the rooster's like, and, you're throwing down with this guy. And it was just insane, but I loved every second of that.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the more like surreal kind of side quests that I guess Far Cry is known for over the years. But yeah, I love that too. Like following this rooster around, doing his bidding, basically. Like whatever he wants to do, I'm just gonna follow from behind. He wants to like mess with this farmer, or he wants to like destroy this car. Sure, I'm just standing behind you. I played that the bunker rooster mission today. It was. Did you say it was 2 missions? Because it was just the one for me. You go get the spurs, and they're deep underground in the bunker.
No, it was another. I did another mission after that as well. So I
there's 2
returned the
bunkers?
spurs. Well, the spurs you got in a bunker, and then there was another bunker with the enhanced experimented roosters. Because there was like 3 missions for that dude. I think all up.
Yeah, I just did the one, and I didn't get the aliens references when I was in there, so I was confused if I had missed them. Because there is like you walk in and there's like a bunch of roosters like in like a lab that have been messed with. So I thought that's what you were talking about, but I guess there's another mission I haven't done yet. Yeah.
And then the one after that, there was that, and then there was a second one where you had to get something from them, and then there's another one where you got to get the eggs. You got to return an egg back as well. Like it's a whole thing.
I'll have to get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're running rampant them angry roosters. But
I took Chickarone down there with me, and he took out like 20 roosters.
I didn't have him at the time when I did it. I just had Guapo with me. But yeah, Chickarone, he's a wild boy. He's a wild boy, and I love the obviously can you pet it that you see on the internet, and all your amigos you can pet or attempt to pat them,
except for the rooster.
Chickarone, he doesn't want no pats. Guapo will allow you to have a pat after he tries to bite you and like give you a little hiss, but it's so good. It's so good. There's so many crazy missions. There's a lot of like celebratory getting on the booze missions where you get very drunk and you got to go here or there, or you're partying and whatever else. I thought they could probably have done with a couple of less of those. I think there was maybe 3 or 4 of those all up, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like each area, like each faction had its own like celebration. Like one of them was jumping in the water to get the grill. One of them was drinking with Paz, and there wasn't one thing that I was going to say for my last word is that finally a Far Cry game with no drug trips, because that's a staple of the franchise that I've always hated, because I hate hallucination sequences.
But you do have a drug trip.
Well, I haven't had a drug trip, and I turned off.
Not as in taking like recreational drugs. When the doctor injects you, remember, and you got to try and make it back to the safe house because you've been injected.
Actually, there is a drug trip.
And you're driving along in the car. You do get a drug trip.
You're right. I forgot about that. It wasn't as annoying, I guess, as some of the other ones that you get, where you go into like a fantasy world completely. I hate that stuff in games. It's a trope that's always just grinds my gears, but they used to minimal effect in this game. And I did not like, there's a lot of accessibility options, which, shout out to Ubisoft for adding that into the game. But one of them was like drunk effects, and I turned drunk effects off. So I don't know if I missed out on some of the...
That's probably a smart choice, because it happens. It can be tough sledding when you've had a couple of bottles of that rum.
Yeah.
I guess after sort of talking the positives and our favourite moments, what about our least favourite moments, nitpicks and gripes? Then we can jump into sort of what we thought of the ending, and then maybe last word.
No, like, really moments in the game that I was like, oh, that sucked, or like anything that disappointed me in that regard. I was going to say, like, for all the improvements, it doesn't really stray from the formula of Far Cry as far as the story goes. It's more deep, and it has that depth with the characters that we've already talked about, which is a great thing. But as far as like the general formula, it's still very much, you've got a charismatic villain who's ruling over the land. The resistance needs to rise up, but you need one person to kind of lead the way and unite all the locals and do all the legwork to get there, while everyone else just kind of stands around. That's in every Far Cry game, and it's certainly the case here. So on paper, just talking about it in that way, it's the same as what we've experienced. It's just that the payoff is probably more rewarding with those cutscenes at the end of it. So it can be a pro or a con. If you're a fan of it, then you're going to get more of it. If you are a fan but want something different, then you might be disappointed. You might be disappointed unless those cutscenes and that extra depth in the characters is enough to kind of be a good payoff, which for me it was actually. So all things considered, I wasn't disappointed by the sameness of this game, like a lot of the reviews have been. Like you said at the top, 74, 75 Metacritic. Feels a bit low to me.
Yeah, I think anywhere from, say, 75 to, say, early 80s, I wouldn't really bat an eyelid to. Like, I'm like, anywhere in that, I think, is probably what I'd sort of quantify my time and experience with this game was. Like,
yeah. If I'd played Far Cry 5 even as recently as, like, last year, I probably would have enjoyed it a lot less because of that, like, sameness. And I think that a lot of the critiques were just like, oh, it's just another Far Cry game with a new skin or a new map. And in some ways it is. And in some ways it's not. But, yeah, I think that is, like, where you fall on whether you find this repetitive is probably going to be that factor between, is it a 72 or is it an 82?
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. Like, I sort of touched on at this, like in the non-spoiler, I thought that the overall length of the mainline game could be shaved a little bit. So that's probably one of my least favorite moments. There was a few times, not often, I got to say, like through this 20 to 30 hour jaunt, I loved it, but there was a few times like, come on, man, just this quest is irrelevant. Just why does it need to be here? I don't care. Let's move. But like what you said too, I wished that we did, like, fair enough, this is the Danny Rojas hero story. You know, you're seeing he or she rise to power and become this this face of Libertad and this face of the revolution and whatever, and that's awesome. But maybe, even though we have to do everything in the group, maybe if they could have lent more on, you know, you're out there doing these things, but then you get a call from Clara and she's like, One's just done this, or you're talking to Group X1, they're like, we've just taken over this area, or you get an update that something else has been overthrown to make it feel like more people are doing stuff. It feels like everyone else is just sitting around getting on the piss and like hanging out in their little bunkers, and you're doing everything else. So maybe if they could try and just imply that somebody else is doing something, you know, I'd feel a little less cheated because, like, man, I got the whole nation on my back here. I'm doing everything. And yeah, I'm the best marksman and guerrilla in this group, but come on, where's my teamwork?
Yeah, there's a few missions where it's like, okay, Philly's going to do this and the other person's going to run point and you're going to be up in the clock tower or whatever it is. Like, I guess there's that type of mission. But when it boils down to it, it's you doing all the... Like, you're flying the planes, you're, you know, doing the drop-offs.
You're building the plane, flying the plane, taking the goods in and out of the plane, fueling up the plane, putting the plane online when you need to sell it for another plane. You are doing the whole thing. Yeah. You are Libertad.
Pretty much, yeah.
Which is fine, but yeah, you know what? Let me at least feel like someone else is helping me in the background more often than not, instead of just a phone call to say, yo, have you done this? Have you called this person yet?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I've been busy. I've also just killed 300 men as I stormed in to steal something. Like, you're welcome.
Yeah, there's a lot of body count, like big body count in this game. Must be the
I couldn't find it anywhere in the game to sort of look up the stats of the amount of people I've killed, and it'd be 4 figures easy. Yeah. Easily 4 figures.
Yeah, mass murder.
Yep, so many. But you do it with a smile, and then you get on the cans and have a good time. But we'll sort of might jump into, I guess, what we thought of the ending and how it all played out. I thought it was really, really, really well handled. It was a emotional roller coaster through the entirety of this journey as Danny in trying to overthrow El Presidente. But when you finally catch him and he's cornered and he's trapped in this room and he's there with his son Diego, and obviously the cancer has really, really caught on. Like, that's one cool thing they did in this game, is you can sort of see this game isn't played out over the span of like a weekend or something in real time. It's done over weeks or months, because you can see El Presidente's health just degrading every time you meet him, and he's looking more and more ill and closer to death. And by the time you finally capture him up in the penthouse suite, he looks like death's going to get him tomorrow anyway. But instead of letting Libertad kill him or make an example of him or hang him up like they did with one of his generals, he slices his own throat and goes out on his own terms. But the part that maybe I was too naive in thinking this took me by surprise, JP, but he shoots his own son first too, because like he asked Danny, is my son going to be okay with you or something? Paraphrasing completely, like, and Danny's like, we're going to look after him. He's going to be fine. But the pride and just the stubbornness and just the pig-headedness of El Presidente is like, that's not going to happen. If he's not my son, he's nobody's. Shoots his son in the guts and then slices his own throat. And I was just like, what? I was so lost.
Yeah. I still don't entirely understand that. Like, was there any way he would see his son survive? I guess not. If like he said that his son was basically bred because he was diagnosed with this illness. So he was, I guess, meant to take over. And so the fact that he had lost the battle himself meant that the son was basically had no purpose in living.
Yeah. Maybe the only thing I could think of was because Diego in El Presidente's eyes showed moments of weakness and restraint where he's like, no, don't kill her, or don't kill Danny, or Danny saved me. So maybe because he wasn't as cold and hard as he has been trying to raise this kid to be, maybe that's why he shot him, because ultimately he knew he wouldn't grow up to fulfill his dream of becoming the next El Presidente.
It definitely took me by surprise. I think, talking about Diego as a character, that's a part of the game that I think probably surprised me the most. I knew that Juan Carlo was going to have a presence and be a villain that you couldn't take your eyes off. But the story, I didn't expect to be so engrossed in the story of this kid. And is the kid good? Is the kid bad? Is he empathetic? Is he just like his dad? Is it bubbling beneath the surface, like some kind of Anakin Skywalker kind of thing going on there? So to see, like, first of all, when he shot the general that was torturing you, I was like, wow, that was a shocking moment. That was a very shocking moment to me. And then for him to get taken out at the end, what actually ends up happening to him? Like,
to Diego?
Yeah. Did he make it? Did he die? I can't remember.
He did. He
died.
Yep.
Right. That's pretty heavy, like, to just kill off a kid in a game.
Yeah. You don't see that very often in games at all. And for it to just be like, bang, bang, like out of nowhere, completely unexpected. Like, obviously he was cornered and desperate, and he knew that was the only way out for him and his family in El Presidente's eyes. But I still did not expect that. I just had an envision that this was then going to flash forward like 10, 20 years, and Diego was going to be ruling Yara, but with like not an iron fist. But instead, he's dead with his dad and his mum.
Yeah, I thought that might be a cool way to kind of do like a Red Dead Redemption and like the flash forward, and now he's the dictator, and that's why you have to continue playing in the end game to kind of wipe out all the remnants or the rising from his people. And there is an end game which I'm surprised, like they've gone to a bit more detail and depth to have like an insurgence from that team. So
time-based weekly missions or weekly story arcs where you've still got splinters of El Presidente's army still out there, and figureheads are rising, and they're just taking over certain parts of an island for a week at a time, and you've got to go in there and do 4 little submissions to then reveal the location of this new general, and then you've got to kill them to stop the insurgency, which I think's awesome.
Yeah.
Makes me want to go back. I did one yesterday or the day before, finished this week's one. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's good. Like it gives you more reason to play, especially now that you've kind of taken the story, and it's a bit more appealing to go back and play in co-op with a friend, I think. But anyway, after the credits, you get this scene with Juan, or at least you hear their voices as he's having this conversation with a smuggler. What did you take away from that? I don't think it's like it wasn't like a heel turn necessarily. It was more just the kind of like, this guy wasn't all he was making himself out to be.
Yeah, so Juan is selling this cancer treatment drug to this, in air quotes, smuggler, who sounds a lot like Vaz to me, JP. So they've already confirmed with future DLC for this game. There's going to be free content where you're going to see Vast not only come back, but Pagan Min from Far Cry 4 and Joseph Seed from Far Cry 5. You're also getting a Danny Trejo inspired Rambo-esque mission. And somehow you're getting a crossover mission with Stranger Things coming to Far Cry 6. I don't know how that's going to work. Everything else makes sense. But if we're going to get some DLC...
I don't know how the Joseph Seed one really plays into it with the timelines, but okay, sure. Like, the end of Far Cry 5 was pretty, conclusive, but anyway. I
think we might get maybe these baddies in maybe some form of multiplayer option, potentially. Yeah. But that's the only way I could, see it play out, especially with what happened with Joseph C. at the end of 5. But, Vars, who got stabbed many, many times in 3, but that was also in some kind of hallucinogenic dream sequence where you were never completely sure if it was fact or fiction. But he's a great character, and he's going to play a part in Far Cry 6 somehow, or Far Cry 7, but he's definitely going to play a part in some upcoming DLC content, or DLC for Far Cry 6, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, and I mean, the actor that plays him, Michael Mando's only become huge since Far Cry 3 too, with his run on Better Call Saul, amongst some other appearances. He's done really well for himself. I love seeing him pop up here and there. But there is a secret ending. I don't know if you saw this one, Brendan.
I haven't seen it. I read about it, but tell the listeners about this secret ending as well, JP.
So if you are a trophy hunter like myself, you'll notice there's a trophy for escaping to Miami, which I figured was just finishing the game. But it's not. If you get in a boat or plane and leave the map, you actually trigger a cutscene where Danny finds him or herself on the beach of Miami, kicking back and relaxing with a cocktail and a radio playing, and it's newsreader talks about this failed coup in Yara, whatever it's called, Yara, and how the resistance leaders were all killed by the dictator, and it's basically I guess the bad ending because Danny's there, all his friends have been killed, and he's sitting on the beach. And then it just kicks you back. If you hit continue after the credits, you do get a full credits roll in the trophy, but if you hit continue, it puts you back in where you were before you left, and a weird, some kind of comment from the player, I've got a weird feeling or something like that, or I'm back here again. It feels like a deja vu or something.
It's so great.
So I just love that they do that.
Because they allude to it a lot. Before you're fully on board with Libertad, you're constantly saying, I'm just going to do this mission, then get me a boat, and I'm out of here. I'm done. This isn't for me. And the fact that you've got that freedom to do that and then trigger this ending where you hear Clara get shot down and killed again anyway, I think it's really cool.
It is. And it continues at least from Far Cry 4, I know, there's an ending at the beginning of that game where you can just deliver a package to Pagan Min like you're meant to, or you can just kill him straight away. There's a few different things you can do at the start of that game to just end the whole thing before it begins. And I love that they mess with the timeline in that way, and it's kind of just a fun Easter egg and a butterfly effecty kind of alternate reality that they open up the opportunity to explore.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. Well, I guess this sort of brings us to the back end of this episode of Spoilercast, taken on Far Cry 6. JP, what is your last word on Far Cry 6 for the listeners?
I think this might be my favorite Far Cry game. I don't know if it's the best one, but it's the one that I've probably enjoyed the story of the most. And I did like 5. I've liked all of them, really. They've all had their own little things that have made them stand out. But I just think that the combination of them, I guess, having been around the block a few times and taking out things that didn't work and adding a few quality of life improvements, I guess you could call them, and that mixed in with just the hardware and the performance of the current generation of consoles that we're playing on. Cross that with Giancarlo's Esposito. What's his name? Yeah.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah,
You nailed it.
I did. I questioned myself. But yeah, adding him to the mix instead of just another, Troy Baker or whatever that we're used to hearing all the time. It's just so good to see someone with his presence, and it feels like you're actually watching him. Like it looks just like him. Yeah. The graphics aren't the very, very top of what you can achieve in games, but they're enough that you kind of suspend disbelief and think that you're kind of just watching him play out a scene instead of a mocap sequence. So, all those things I've just mentioned, and maybe a touch of recency bias, but I think that this is my favorite Far Cry, and one that after finishing I could see myself getting back to, or playing a bit of co-op and just enjoying with no drug trips.
Yeah, even though there was that one, but that was required. It made sense. But I'm with you, man. Like I had an absolute bucket load of fun playing Far Cry 6. Doesn't mean the game is perfect or not without its warts. There is still a few things where they could improve. But just like you said, mirroring your thoughts, it's still probably my favorite entry into the Far Cry series to date. I'm looking forward to actually trying co-op for the first time. Sadly, it's not crossplay. Otherwise, we could play together. So I need to find someone on Xbox to play with me so I can feel that out. But I love the assortment of larger-than-life characters mixed in with not only big emotional uppercuts, but hilariously chaotic combat. And it all just comes together to create one of my favorite games of the year, to be honest. Yeah. Like, I've had so much fun the last couple of weeks playing this game. It's just been what I've been looking for after a couple of big games back to back to back. And like Deathloop was phenomenal. I really enjoyed that. But I think I maybe enjoyed the minute-to-minute gameplay of Far Cry 6 more than I did Deathloop, which is a big thing to say. Both really good games, both very different games.
Despite looking similar, they're both first-person shooters with stealth or action and the story, but yeah, they're very different. And I think Deathloop's originality has probably got it a little bit ahead as more memorable than this game for me at this point. But yeah, I can certainly see where you're coming from. And for a game that's just, now I guess it's the 8th Far Cry game, if you include New Dawn and Primal, and Blood Dragon, I guess you could throw in there too. It's certainly, I feel like it's moving in the right direction as far as, the repetition you see from Ubisoft sometimes with Assassin's Creed games and kind of losing their way and revamping them or relaunching and starting fresh and making these big changes to that franchise to kind of keep it fresh. They're not trying to do that here. No. They're just iterating to get it to the point that they know they've got the right idea. They just need to nail it. And I think that they nailed it with this one. I at the same time, I can see the franchise finding ways to keep improving. I think Far Cry 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 will be doing that more. I hope. Maybe they'll make a game in Australia one day.
I was literally just about to say that. I'm like, where's their next location going to be? Maybe out in the outback or something like that. Out in some remote cattle station.
A little rogue community where it's probably not densely populated enough, but I'm sure
that's true.
I'm sure they could figure out, some alternate reality or future if they have to.
Yeah, it's just on a continent called Australia. Yeah. They just call it Australia just to avoid any issues there. But yeah, it feels like Ubisoft will fire on all cylinders with this game for 95% of what you experience. And I really enjoyed it, and JP really enjoyed it. And I think we can both probably say that makes this game officially 8-bit approved. And if you're looking for something that's going to take 20, 30, 40, 50 plus hours, especially with a whole host of free downloadable content coming your way in the near future, this game could be one for you. So, if you've got a little bit extra pocket money and you're looking for some more of that familiar Far Cry hotness, this is certainly a worthwhile purchase. But Far Cry 6 officially 8-bit approved. Thanks again to Ubisoft for providing us copies on Xbox as well as PlayStation. Find myself on the socials at Brendan8bit. Find Jono at Jono himself. Find us as a whole at We Are 8-bit. Be sure to rate, subscribe us, and all the other podcasts you listen to on the Reg. Takes no time, costs no money, helps keep the emotional lights on in our hearts. Thanks again to Audio Technica for making us sound and hear things as good as humanly possible. But Jono, you got anything else you want to say before we close this bad boy down?
I got a few putting in work episodes coming into the feed, so check those out. Pat Contry, the NES Punk, got one going up with old mate Johnny Galvatron from The Artful Escape that just came out, and you might have heard that as part of PAX Radio, but if you missed it, that'll be going up in a couple of weeks, as well as my panel that I'll turn into a podcast soon. So just keep an eye on Putting in Work and Comedy Rewind and all the other great 8-bit content.
Plenty of content to consume all the way up until Christmas. So keep your attention locked onto 8bit.net or those 8-bit related podcast feeds. But until next time, 8-bit Nation, it has been our pleasure to spoil things for you. Much love.
Stay hungry.